Good evening and welcome to Byline. This is a public affairs show here at Amherst Media, and it's co-sponsored by the Amherst League of Women Voters. And we've been meeting with people in our town government every week to learn about our new system of government and how it's playing out. We voted for the charter, we have a new government, and a lot of changes had to take place as a result of the charter and the new positions and a smaller legislature and more authority in the executive. So we've been trying to help our neighbors here understand how our government is unfolding. And today we have a very special guest and someone who is no stranger to people who've lived in town a long time because he and his family have lived in Amherst for a very long time. Dave Ziomek, our Assistant Town Manager, who a couple of times along the way you were acting town manager.
That's right.
You had fun doing that, but I know you love what you're doing now.
I do, yeah. Happy to be here with you today,
Thank
Stan.
you. And before we get into what you're doing now, I just commented that you're a longtime Amherst resident. You were in fact born here.
I was born in Northampton, but raised in Amherst.
There you
and,
go.
spent some time in the Boston area and came back here to with my wife to raise our family.
Fantastic. And your family goes back how long?
Quite a ways. We come
ways.
from a farming family, some roots in Boston, but also we still have our family farm on Meadow Street on the Amherst Hadley line.
Yeah, so the Ziomek family's been here a very, very long time.
My dad was superintendent of public works for, I'm going to say, 40 years.
I would meet him at the post office at 6 a.m.
He was an early riser.
Years and years and years and years, even after he retired.
Yes.
He'd be up there at 6 a.m. getting his mail.
He was very enthusiastic about Amherst all the time.
And he started the Amherst Baseball League.
He did.
And your brother became a very effective baseball player for a while there.
My nephew, actually. My nephew.
My apologies.
Yes, my nephew.
Your nephew, okay.
Yeah, was drafted by the Tigers and ended up going a long way in his baseball career.
That's great. But now we're back here in Amherst, and we're talking about what you're doing as Assistant Town Manager. So what's the portfolio, what's the nature of the job that you're doing?
Sure. So working obviously with our Town Manager Paul Bockelman, my job is to oversee a number of different departments under the broad heading of Conservation and Development. And that title for that department was actually created by John Musante. But some 8 or 9 years ago, I was promoted to Assistant Town Manager. So I oversee conservation, planning, inspection services, zoning, and broadly defined community development. And then I'm assigned special projects by the town manager, depending on the time of year and what we're focused on at that particular time.
So if Paul Bockelman, our town manager, is off on vacation, are you?
Yes.
You're the guy.
Yes.
Right.
I will fill in for him as acting when he is at a conference or on vacation or something of that sort.
And your initial work in town government really started with conservation and things to do with land preservation and environmental concerns here in town.
It did. I've been with the town 15 years. As you said, grew up here, but have had a number of different jobs, primarily in natural resource planning. But going back to Barry Del Castillo, when Barry actually hired me, we began to talk about the need for Amherst to really coordinate their land use permits and their land use approach under one umbrella. And that's, I think, really where the conservation and development piece came to be. And really, I think it's been very effective through the years, is to have all of these departments that work with landowners, that work with homeowners, that work with developers, that work with various boards and committees, working together and not have them be siloed, even in a small town like this. Collaboration, communication is so important for helping us move through our goals set by, whether it was historically by the select board and town meeting, but now, of course, by our town council and our working with our town manager. So having planning, conservation, inspection services, zoning, all together in one suite in Town Hall makes great sense. And then we reach out to DPW, to fire and other health, LSSE, to pull groups together to coordinate town-wide projects or to review private developments that might come before the town.
And so planning and zoning are under your purview.
Yes.
And there are staff who are specialists in those areas that report to a director and then up to you. Can you comment a little bit on where we are on planning in town? Because there's been some conversation over time that we have a master plan that's in place, but now we have a new government, and a lot of things are bouncing around town with regard to planning and economic development. And some people have talked about, do we need a new master plan? Do we need to just do some updating? How do you see that from the seat in which you sit?
Sure. Well, first off, I'm very fortunate to have an incredible staff in conservation and development, and those two departments. Planning is led by Christine Brestrup, who's been with the town for many years, and then Rob Mora is our building commissioner. So again, very fortunate to have such qualified and dedicated people leading those two departments. And of course, we also work closely with Jeff Kravitz on economic development, because community development includes elements of open space preservation, quality of life improvements like sidewalks and parks, and it also includes working with our for-profit sector on new housing, for instance, whether it be market rate housing or affordable housing. All of those elements come together to help us improve the quality of life for everyone here in Amherst. So specifically on the master plan, we're very excited that the town council has created some new committees in town. One of those being the Community Resources Committee, or CRC. So again, it's my job and staff's job to work closely and carefully with a group like the CRC to assess where we are with our master plan. And so our master plan was completed in 2010. Here we are in 2019. It's time that we took a look at that master plan, and that will come through the CRC and then eventually up to the council for review, assessment, and then we'll look at what are those areas that we need to improve in that master plan going forward. A great example is on sustainability. To be perfectly honest, in 2010,
people weren't thinking that much about it in that planning process.
They weren't, and I'm not sure many of us were thinking as specifically as we are now. So clearly that's one distinct area where we need to update and enhance our master plan to really look as a community at
how long does a master plan typically last in a community?
Typically about 10 years, sometimes 20, depending. But I think in a community like Amherst, we need to be reviewing it. It shouldn't sit on the shelf, in other words. There shouldn't be a bookend somewhere.
So you don't have to throw the whole plan out. You can pick certain areas that you think for which there should be a deep dive, and really try to focus on those areas and amend the plan in those areas without starting from scratch. Is that essentially what you're saying?
That's our hope.
Yeah.
Again, I will be working closely with Christine Brestrup, Rob Mora, and other staff to work with the CRC and the council. I don't want to speak for the council or the CRC, but our hope is that we have a really solid foundation in our master plan and we can update certain sections. I would also highlight affordable housing. Clearly, we've made some progress on affordable housing. There has been new units added to our inventory, but there's no doubt with all the emphasis nationally, regionally, and right here in our town on the need for more affordable housing in all categories, from helping those people experiencing homelessness to workforce housing and senior affordable housing. So that's clearly an area, I think, of our master plan that we need to update and enhance.
How about zoning?
So much to talk about. Absolutely. Zoning.
Is this another deep? Is this a deep dive?
Yeah, we could take, I think, the whole program today to just talk about zoning.
Yeah.
I'd love to have you speak, with Christine Brestrup and/or Rob Mora at some point. But there's no question that we need to look comprehensively at our zoning. There are a number of areas that I think staff and many committees and boards have looked at over the past 5 to 10 years. And we've made, again, some good progress through town meeting, but I think we need to look, again, comprehensively at all of our zoning.
So the jurisdiction with regard to zoning is on the executive side. That would be in your shop?
Zoning, again, no. Zoning will need to come through the council. Ultimately, the council will approve
they will
any
have
new
to make
zoning.
changes,
Yes.
but in terms of administering the existing zoning
Oh,
rules
yes.
and regulations,
Yes.
that's done in concert with the planning department and development and all of that. So on the executive side, you're the sort of at the top of the chain?
Right, but let's
Okay.
not forget, I mean, we have a very active and wonderful zoning board of
Zoning
appeals.
Board of Appeals,
So
right.
those applications come through the ZBA.
Yeah.
Our building commissioner is an expert in zoning, so he advises and works with planning staff on applications that come to the ZBA. But I think there's no question that our business community, our planning board, and our community as a whole, I think, wants to look at zoning and say, where are we? Well, let's take a look at where we are, the playing field, and how we want to move forward. The master plan calls for more dense development in our village center, and I don't in our village centers.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone.
Yeah, we now think of it as village centers, no longer just downtown.
Right, it's not just downtown. It's North Amherst and the development we're seeing in North Amherst. It's
South
Atkins,
Amherst.
near Atkins.
Yeah.
It's our East Village Center
Yeah.
on the way to Belchertown in that way that could use some attention and could certainly, I think, benefit the residents of those village centers with some carefully planned redevelopment of some of those parcels. So I think village center zoning, village center planning is going to be a major focus for the next 5 years. Again, working through and with the CRC, the council, the planning board, of course, has a major role in all of those plans and decisions.
And so any review of zoning would start within the town department of planning?
We're working on that right now, and again, the council is relatively new,
Yeah.
but zoning historically, of course, has come through the planning board, recommended to town meeting.
And then carried out by the planning department
Right.
and zoning board of appeals after everything is settled and in place.
Right.
But with our new form of government, we're still working our way through
Exactly.
these processes.
And we've had a very active subcommittee of the planning board, which is the zoning subcommittee. And that's the group that historically has really worked at analyzing and assessing what zoning is working and what new changes or amendments we might propose. So I think the CRC committee, working with the planning board and the zoning subcommittee, there needs to be, and I think there will be, really positive conversations as to how, in our new form of government, zoning works its way through the system.
Now, you were talking a few minutes ago about all the great work that was done in the past around land conservation and open space. If I remember correctly, Amherst was one of the leading communities in the APR program, Agricultural Preservation Restriction Program. We've also been extremely successful in getting state grants for conservation land and for strategies around that. And we recently got a new grant that is about to unfold. Can you tell us about that?
Sure. If I could just take a moment just to, give
the context.
Yeah, the context really is that Amherst has been a leader in open space preservation. And I think, again, that harpers back to our master plan, that our master plan really did say that the citizens, residents of Amherst wanted to preserve natural resources, active farmland, prime farmland. And I think, by and large, we've done that. I think our acquisition program for open space is really going to come to a close, and I think the real focus on that will be on managing that land and helping farmers to be more productive and successful. The flip side of that is, as I said, we want to concentrate new development in our village centers while at the same time enjoying the benefits of 80 miles of conservation trails and beautiful places like Mount Pollux and Puffer's Pond. But I think the actual acquisition of land over the next couple of years, I think we will have achieved our goals according to the master plan.
So we're not going to see a lot more of,
I don't think so.
Of acquisition.
There's a couple.
It's going to be managing.
Yep.
And a lot of it is for passive recreation. It's available to the community at large.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, yeah. I think we'll see some enhancement. I think there are a lot of residents, users of that conservation land, that would like to see better signage, kiosks, information, parking areas clearly marked, things like that. Bridges that we need to replace that are 20 or 30 years old. So I think that's the work that'll be going on in the next 5 to 10 years. And there are a couple of acquisitions or preservation projects that we'll embark on. And there's a couple right now we're trying to finish up that I'll talk about in a minute if we have time. But so yeah, there's I think an effort right now to really transition our program from acquisition to management.
Great. Yeah. And you've been doing a lot of work on parks. Mm-hmm. So can you talk a little bit about where we are in that, the purpose of this focus, and why at this time, and what are we accomplishing in that realm? Sure.
So Amherst is blessed with a number of great recreation areas. Most of them, with the exception of near the high school and community field, are probably in the 1970s, 60s, 70s era parks. And so working with the town manager, working with the LSSC Commission, the planning department, we really began to look at how can we enhance the parks townwide and give opportunities for residents living in South, East, Central, and North Amherst better parks. Mill River, which was built in the 1970s, is in pretty good shape. We've gotten some grants to enhance Mill River. We've used some CPA dollars, Community Preservation Act dollars, to enhance Mill River. So right now, as we're talking, we're trying to finish up this wonderful project at Groff Park, where we're doing a spray park, Amherst's first spray park, and a brand new playground. This is a $1.3 million project. We got a fair amount of that money through a federal grant, but the rest of the money came through CPA dollars. So we're hoping to wrap that up before the snow flies and do a grand opening in the spring. Just this week, we got an announcement of a $400,000 grant for building a new playground at Kendrick Park in downtown. And this is in response to families and parents who have said, they love downtown Amherst, they come to shop and eat and go to events there, but they'd love someplace close to town, walkable, bikeable, that they can be with their kids. And Kendrick Park makes perfect sense.
That's great. And remind people where Kendrick Park is located.
Kendrick Park is located in the north end of our downtown on North Pleasant Street.
Heading toward the university.
Exactly.
Isn't that the kind of the newest of our parks,
if you will? It was donated to the town.
Yeah.
Exactly. It was donated through a bequest. And it's been a pretty passive park with a little artwork in it for some years, but we now have an opportunity to do a really nice park. We'll be presenting an application to our CPA committee in the coming months to try to match the state money with a modest amount of CPA dollars.
Great. That reminds me about something that has been on my mind for a very long time, and I'm wondering if someday we might find a way of integrating this into our parks. Remember those big, beautiful white tablets that were on the wall of Town Hall heading from the second floor down to the first floor that lists the Civil War contributions of African American residents of Amherst? And those had fallen into a bit of disrepair. It's hard to imagine big marble things falling into disrepair, but there were actually cracks in them. And when they took them down, they carefully took them down during the renovation of the town hall, and they were put in storage. And they were not able to put them back in those same spots for some reason as a result of the renovation of the building. But they've been repaired, they're in good shape, but they're not being displayed yet. So I think something we have to focus on here in town is to figure out a place where they can go. And I had wondered whether they could be integrated into one of our parks. And some people have said that there's some worry about them being outdoors. But then I wondered if maybe there was some other way you could do something at a park where it wasn't exposed to all of the elements. I don't know, but that's a challenge we ought to try to figure out, get some folks in town, because they're beautiful, they're an important contribution to the history of the community, and remembering and understanding the diversity of this community and the respect we have for everyone who lives here. And for those tablets to be out of sight, it puts them out of mind. To put them out of mind means that there's an opportunity being lost to remind people of the contribution of those families to this community.
Absolutely, Stan. I share your commitment. I have been in, I can't tell you how many conversations, meetings focused on those Civil War tablets. And we've been close a couple of times. They're absolutely gorgeous. They've been restored, as you said, and they should be displayed. We looked very hard at locations outside of Town Hall. We looked at the North Common, and what we were told, and by experts in the field, is that they are so sensitive to weather, UV, and will break down very quickly if they are displayed outside, that we refocused our energy inside. And as you said, they're very heavy. They're, I want to say, 600 to 800 pounds a piece.
Am I remembering there are 3 of them?
Oh, there are more than that. I don't know the actual number.
Wow.
I want to say there are more like 6 or 8.
Wow.
So one of the things that we had talked about in our discussions on this was, might there be a place, if the library moves forward with one of their plans, would a logical place to put them be in the library? And so I think that's an interesting avenue for us to explore, because
that sounds really interesting. Yeah. Because we're going to do 3 capital projects if we can put the financing together: Public Works, Library, and School. Would not be appropriate at Public Works, so Library and School both would be appropriate, but Library even more than School.
Right.
But okay, well, let's not forget those tablets.
No, they are on my.
They're a piece of our history and our legacy to the future of the sacrifices made of those in the past.
They are definitely on my list, and we will work this to.
Okay, we're going to hold you to that.
Absolutely.
So I also wanted to ask you. So your portfolio is it's a lot of the doing. Do you have any interaction around the budget or finances in the town?
I do. It is really often project specific. So as we're looking at, for instance, the capital plan, as we're looking at CPA and spending for CPA, and my job is to work with a number of different department heads and their staff to kind of channel those projects that are important and critical for the town to move forward. So a playground in Kendrick Park may seem like, somebody just read it on the headline in the Gazette, but in fact we've been working for 4 or 5 years behind the scenes to get that where we want it to be. Likewise, something like Groff Park, I think I've been working on that with various staff members for probably 10 years. And it takes a long time to put together the votes, the funding, the approvals, and our town projects have to go through many of the same approvals that a private development would have to go through. And
a lot of transparency, a lot of engagement means that you have to take the time to give people all the information they need, and time for people to weigh in, and then time for decisions to be made. Right. But ultimately, got to get on with the project.
Yes. I don't know how our time is, but if we have a moment, one of the projects we're working on, and I'm very excited about right now, is going back to our open space discussions, is the Hickory Ridge acquisition.
Excellent.
Which is really an exciting opportunity, I think, for the town. And this is more than an open space project. We are not buying it to, or attempting to buy it to get into the golf business. We have Cherry Hill Golf Course, which is a wonderful 9-hole course in North Amherst. We're working with the owners of Hickory Ridge. They would like to develop about 26 acres of solar power on their generation on their course, and we would like to protect the natural resources of the course and then reuse and work with the town and town leaders, but also potentially the private sector, to redevelop and reuse some of the upland buildable area of the course, which includes where the clubhouse is, the parking lot. So we think we can come up with a wonderful project that provides open space and walking trails for many low and moderate income people who live off of East Hadley Road, while at the same time generating green power and then potentially reactivating, whether it's the clubhouse or working with our folks who advocate for affordable housing, potentially looking at the buildable land for affordable housing.
So trying to create a mixed-use arrangement there that has open space, but also has some commercial, and also, if you can work it out, some housing.
Exactly, on 150 beautiful acres of land along the Fort River.
And how much do you think would be in conservation as opposed to that might be available for development, roughly?
We're working on that right now. A lot of the land does flood, and that's one of the reasons why Hickory Ridge has had so many problems over the year making ends meet, because it is in a floodplain. So I'm going to say there's roughly 6 to 10 acres of buildable land out of the 150. So it's not a lot, but it's high, dry frontage along Pomeroy Lane. Okay. So there's potential there.
Well, thank you for your service to the town, and thank you for being with us, and thank you all for joining us this evening. And we look forward to seeing you at another time on another Friday or Monday night. And hopefully you'll come by to see us again some other time as well. But we'll get some of those other folks you recommended before we bring you back.
That would be great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stan.